Why was everyone ignoring her at the briefing table? The room was tight, the kind where air turned heavy from sweat, paper, and nerves. Maps lay pinned across the wall, lines drawn in red. Men shifted in their chairs, boots scuffing against the floor, weapons resting against their knees. Orders were being handed out. Who would flank, who would breach, who would cover? But when her name came up, there was only silence. A pause. A look from one officer to another, then the conversation continued as if she had never been mentioned. She sat there, spine straight, hands folded over her lap. She didn't fidget, didn't clear her throat, didn't try to remind them that she was in the room. Because she had learned long ago, the louder you ask to be seen, the easier it is for them to dismiss you. She carried herself with quiet pride, and though it made her invisible here, it echoed louder than the applause she would never get. Still the silence cut. The mission was supposed to be simple: a small village in the hills, a suspected weapons transfer, maybe insurgents hiding among families. Intel was vague, too vague. She noticed the gaps, the missing details no one else was questioning. But she said nothing, not yet. Instead, she watched them argue. Young men pretending not to be afraid, older ones trying not to look tired. The captain, broad-shouldered, jaw set, kept talking like this was routine, like there wasn't a storm outside waiting to swallow them whole. She could hear it even through the thick concrete walls. Wind rushing, carrying grit that scratched against windows. The desert had moods, and tonight it was angry. Someone cracked a joke to ease the tension. A ripple of laughter followed, but not from her. She only blinked, her gaze fixed on the map, on that one shaded area no one had mentioned. She thought of saying something, thought of leaning forward, pointing to it, warning them. But the memory stopped her, the last time she spoke up and the smirk she got in return. "Don't worry about it, we've got it covered." She wasn't wrong that day, but she wasn't thanked either. Now the captain's voice broke through. "You'll be on Overwatch, North Ridge." That was it. No eye contact, no nod of acknowledgement, just a flat assignment as though he'd given it to the wall. She gave a single nod, nothing more. Later outside, the storm had begun to ease. The air still smelled of dust, sharp and bitter, but the wind had slowed. She walked alone toward the armory, helmet tucked under her arm, rifle case slung over her shoulder. Inside the dim-lit room, she sat on a bench and began her ritual, opening the case, lifting the weapon with careful hands, running a cloth down the barrel, the bolt, the scope. Every piece mattered. Every scratch had a story. Her rifle wasn't new. Others had better, sleeker, lighter, but this one was hers, and it had never failed her. As she worked, a young private passed by. He slowed, hesitated, then asked softly, "Ma'am, are you nervous?" She looked up, met his eyes. He couldn't have been older than 19. His helmet looked too big for his head. His hands shook slightly as he held his sidearm. For a moment she saw her brother, saw his face, years younger before he shipped off and never came back. She placed the cloth down, her voice calm. "Everyone's nervous. The trick is what you do with it." He nodded quickly, almost grateful she hadn't brushed him off. Then he walked on. She sat there a while longer, alone with the sound of her own breath. A thought pressed at the back of her mind. Why had the intel been so vague? Why had no one questioned it? And why, though she wouldn't admit it aloud, did she feel like this mission was more than it seemed? That night, sleep didn't come easy. The barracks hummed with snores, whispers, shifting bodies. But she lay awake, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. Her chest was heavy, not from fear exactly, but from something else, an unease she couldn't shake. She thought about her mother, the last phone call before deployment. "Don't be a hero," her mother had said. "Just come home." She wanted to. God, she wanted to. But home felt further away every time, like it was slipping piece by piece into another life. The alarm sounded at 400. No words, no complaints. Boots hit the ground, gear strapped, rifles slung. The world outside was still black, but the horizon whispered of coming dawn. The air was cold enough to bite through gloves. The convoy rolled out, engines low, headlights cut, only the crunch of tires on gravel. She sat in the rear, silent, rifle across her knees. Others spoke in low voices, jokes about what they'd do after. Beer, food, women, the things they always said. She said nothing, but her eyes were sharp, scanning the road, the shadows, always searching, always waiting. The village came into view just as the sun bled over the ridge. Mud walls, flat roofs, smoke rising from a few chimneys. Children darting between alleys. Goats wandering. It looked normal, too normal. She dismounted, boots sinking into sand. Her assignment was clear: overwatch from the north ridge. Cover the team as they entered. She moved quickly, quietly, breaking off alone. The climb was steep, but her legs carried her steady. She'd done this 100 times before, but today her breath felt heavier, her chest tighter. At the ridge, she dropped low, unfolding the bipod, pressing her cheek against the stock. Through the scope, the world sharpened. The village, the rooftops, the shadows. Every window became a question, every movement a threat. Her earpiece crackled. Team moving in, eyes up. Copy. Her finger rested on the trigger guard, calm, still, waiting. Then she saw it, a flicker in the corner of a rooftop, too fast for a villager, too careful. Her heart thumped once hard. She whispered into the mic, "Rooftop east side, movement." A pause, then the captain's voice dismissive, "We've got it, hold position." She gritted her teeth. Through the scope the figure shifted, a glint of metal, a barrel sliding forward. "Rooftop armed," she hissed. "Hold your fire." Her pulse pounded. In her eye the crosshairs steadied. Her breath slowed. The world narrowed to the rooftop, the barrel, the shadow leaning into position. She waited for the order that never came. Then she made the choice. The shot cracked through the valley, echoing, rolling, bouncing off the hills. The figure dropped, and silence followed. In her ear voices erupted, shouts, curses, demands, but she tuned them out because something was wrong. The villagers weren't screaming, they weren't running. They were still, watching, waiting. And in that frozen moment she realized this wasn't a simple mission. Not at all. There was something here none of them had been told. Something buried beneath the vague intel and missing details. And she had just fired the first shot. What had she just triggered? The valley swallowed her shot, echoes dying into silence. For a moment, nothing moved. The village below was frozen, caught in that strange breath between peace and chaos. Children stood in alleys. Women lingered near doorways. Men with weathered faces turned toward the ridge where the crack had come from. No panic, no scattering, just stillness. Her stomach tightened. That wasn't right. In her ear, the captain's voice snapped sharp. "Who authorized that shot?" Her finger still hovered near the trigger. Her voice was low, calm, steady. "Target was armed, rooftop, preparing to fire." "Damn it," I said, "hold." She kept her eye on the scope, tracking, searching. "If I hadn't, one of ours would be down right now." A pause, static hummed in the silence. Then curtly, "Maintain overwatch, that's all." But his tone was wrong, strained, defensive. She scanned again, breath even, scope moving window to window. A dog barked somewhere, sharp against the silence. Then there, another flicker. A door pushed open, a figure slipping through, head low, carrying something long wrapped in cloth. Her pulse quickened. She whispered, "Possible movement, alley near the well." No response. She repeated sharper, "Movement, armed." Nothing. Her jaw tightened. Either their comms were failing or they were ignoring her again. She adjusted, tracking the figure, crosshair steady. But this time she didn't fire. Not yet. Something about the rhythm of the village, the way everyone moved or didn't move, felt orchestrated, too careful, too staged. Her gut twisted. That shaded area on the map. The one no one mentioned. She thought of it now, the lines blurred into her memory. It had been right here, this place. The figure vanished into shadow. She lost them. Her comms crackled again. A voice lower rushed, not the captain, a sergeant. "They're funneling us. It's too quiet. Pull back." The channel cut, static. Then the world erupted. The first blast came from beneath the village square, a plume of dirt and fire. The shockwave rattled her bones even on the ridge. Men shouted in her earpiece, overlapping, panicked. Gunfire followed, staccato bursts echoing off walls. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She swung the scope, searching for her team. Dust clouds blurred everything. Figures scrambled, civilians or fighters, hard to tell. Her finger brushed the trigger again. She had trained for this. To pick targets clean, calculated. But down there, everyone looked the same. A voice in her ear. The young private, the one who had asked if she was nervous, his voice cracked. "We're pinned, north side, we." Static swallowed him. Her throat went dry. She forced herself to breathe, slow and even, grounding through the rifle. Through the glass the world steadied. Shadows moved along rooftops, rifles glinting. Fighters, she squeezed. One dropped. Another turned. She fired again. The rhythm came back, breath, squeeze, recoil. The rifle spoke and the ridge became her anchor. But still the unease pressed harder. This wasn't random resistance. This was a trap, planned, layered, precise. And someone had sent them here blind. Her earpiece crackled again, the captain's voice cutting through. Harsh, commanding. "Hold your fire unless confirmed hostile." Her jaw clenched. Confirmed hostile. What did he think she was shooting? Shadows. She bit down the urge to respond. Arguing wouldn't matter now. All that mattered was keeping them alive. She shifted her angle, eyes narrowing. Through the haze she spotted it, a rooftop, 3 men kneeling, assembling something long, metallic. Not rifles, bigger, a tube. "Mortar." Her chest froze. Her voice ripped sharp into the mic. "Mortar team, east roof, moving to fire." "Negative, repeat negative, do not engage, wheel." The words died under the crack of her rifle. One man dropped, the others scrambled. She cycled the bolt, fired again. Another fell. The last bolted down the stairs, vanishing. Her hands trembled after the third shot, not from doubt, from anger. Why were they holding her back? Below, the fight roared louder. Gunfire laced the air, shouts tangled with screams. She spotted her team in fragments, flashes of uniforms, bursts of muzzle fire. They were boxed in, corralled like prey. The private's voice broke through again, frantic. "We can't hold, we're losing." Then a scream cut short. Her chest burned. For a moment she closed her eyes, just one moment. She could see him, 19, helmet too big, asking if she was nervous. She swallowed hard, opened her eyes, and put her cheek back to the stock. There wasn't room for grief, not now. Through the glass she caught sight of something else. A flicker in the far corner of the village near the well. Men moving crates, not fighting, carrying, loading them into the ground, into some kind of tunnel. Her pulse hammered. This wasn't about the team, not about the firefight. The firefight was the distraction. The real operation was happening under their feet. Her throat tightened. She wanted to scream into the comms, to make them listen, to force the captain to see. But she knew the truth. He wouldn't, not him, not now. She steadied her breath, scope fixed on the tunnel. She could end it, put one shot into the crate, blow it apart, maybe stop whatever they were moving. But she hesitated because she didn't know what was inside, weapons, explosives, or people. Her chest ached with the weight of the decision. One pull could save lives, or take the wrong ones. Her hand trembled, the trigger weighted. "Overwatch report," the captain's voice again, cold, detached. She swallowed, eyes locked on the tunnel. No movement. The lie burned her throat. Because something deep inside told her, if she revealed what she saw, they'd silence her, one way or another. So she held it, kept it buried. And in that moment, her mission changed. She wasn't just their sniper anymore. She was the only one who knew the truth that this wasn't just an ambush. It was bigger, deeper, something no one else seemed willing to see. The fight raged below, but her eyes stayed fixed on that shadowed well, on the men slipping crates into the earth, on the unanswered question clawing at her chest. What was really hidden here? And why had they been sent into it blind? How long could she stay on the ridge, watching them die? The question pressed harder with every scream in her earpiece, every burst of gunfire from below. Smoke was spreading across the village now, thick and acrid, curling into the dawn sky. Through her scope, she saw flames licking at rooftops, saw men scrambling, firing blind, saw soldiers, her soldiers, pinned against walls, running out of time. Her orders were clear: hold overwatch, stay put, cover them. But orders meant nothing when the ground itself was swallowing the truth. Her eye flicked back to the well. Shadows still moved there. Men bent low, hauling crates, slipping into tunnels, organized, calm, as if the chaos above was just cover. She whispered to herself, almost voiceless, "This isn't the mission." The radio crackled, static, shouts, panic, then a voice she recognized. The sergeant, harsh, desperate. "We're cut off, need fire support now." She swung the scope, found them near the northern wall. 4 of them, pinned behind a crumbling mud brick house, bullets chipping stone inches above their heads. The young private was there too, his helmet still too big, his rifle clutched too tight, his mouth open in a scream she couldn't hear through glass. Her chest pulled tight. Her fingers slipped to the trigger. Breath, squeeze, crack. One hostile dropped from a rooftop, cycle the bolt. Breath, crack, another. For a few seconds the pressure eased on them. The sergeant shouted into comms, "Overwatch, keep it coming." She wanted to. God, she wanted to. But movement caught her eye again. The well. A crate slipping below ground, carried by 2 men with deliberate calm. Her scope wavered between them. Her team, the tunnel team, tunnel. The rifle felt heavier. Her earpiece snapped alive. The captain's voice, cold, commanding. "Overwatch, hold fire unless confirmed hostile." Her jaw clenched. "They're confirmed." "Negative, do not engage the civilians. That's an order." "Civilians," her blood chilled. She whispered back low. "They're moving crates through a tunnel, armed escort." Silence, then clipped. "Overwatch, that's not your concern. Cover the team. Do you copy?" She didn't answer. Her eye stayed fixed on the well. One more crate disappeared, and with it, the uneasy certainty that they were being used. Her throat tightened. How could he not see it? How could he ignore it? Unless— the thought came sharp, uninvited, unless he already knew. A bullet smacked stone inches from her, spraying grit across her cheek. She flinched, rolled low. The ridge was compromised. They had spotted her. She slung the rifle, chest heaving, and began to crawl. Dirt filled her gloves. Pebbles scraped her knees. Another shot cracked, tearing into the rock behind her. She moved faster, heart pounding in her ears. She couldn't stay up here anymore. Couldn't just be the distant eye. If she wanted answers, if she wanted to keep them alive, she had to go down there. Another round whined past, hot in the air. She slid into a shallow ravine, breath ragged, and sprinted down the slope. Her boots slipped in the sand, legs burning, but she didn't stop. At the base, she pulled into cover, lungs tearing for air. Gunfire rattled nearby. Shouts, English, Arabic, blurred into chaos. She unclipped her sidearm, checked the chamber, and pushed forward. The village swallowed her whole. Narrow alleys, walls looming close, smoke stinging her eyes. Every corner threatened. Every shadow held weight. She moved like she had trained. Rifle up, steps low, breath controlled. But inside her chest was a storm. She passed a door half open. Inside, a woman clutched 2 children, eyes wide with terror. Not fighters, just villagers. She lowered her weapon, whispered soft, "Stay inside," then moved on. Her radio hissed with half-broken voices. The sergeant again, cursing, firing, shouting for ammo. The captain barking orders that no longer matched the battlefield. And through it all, the young private's voice, thin, afraid, alive. She turned toward it, feet carrying her fast through the smoke. Gunfire cut across the alley ahead. She dropped low, heart slamming, and peeked the corner. There they were. The sergeant crouched behind a wall, firing bursts, two others bleeding, one holding a leg wound, and the private pale, eyes wide, shaking as he reloaded. She stepped out, rifle braced, firing clean. One hostile dropped, another scattered back. The team looked up, shock flashing in their faces. The sergeant snarled into comms, "Overwatch, off the ridge, she's here." The captain's voice roared back instantly, "What? Who authorized?" She cut in sharp, breathless, "Shut up and fight." The sergeant stared at her, teeth clenched, but he didn't argue, not now. They held the alley together, her shots cutting down angles, his bursts holding the line. The private flinched every time he fired, but he stayed in it, sweat streaming down his young face. Then the sergeant leaned close, voice low, "What the hell are you doing here?" She kept firing, calm. The ridge was compromised. "Bullshit," he spat dust, eyes narrowing. "You saw something, didn't you?" She hesitated, just long enough for him to notice. His jaw set, he knew. But before either could speak again, an explosion tore through the far end of the alley. Heat washed over them. The shockwave slammed her against the wall. Ears rang. Dust filled her lungs. Through the haze, figures emerged. More fighters, more than before, pouring in like a tide. Her hand steadied on the rifle. Breath, squeeze, crack, but there were too many. The sergeant shouted, dragging the wounded back, "We need to move now." She nodded, covering them as they pulled into a side alley. The private stumbled, nearly fell, but she grabbed his arm, yanked him forward. His eyes met hers for just a moment, wide, terrified, desperate. She didn't let go until they were inside cover. They crouched in the dark, chests heaving, smoke pressing close. For a moment there was silence, just their breathing, just the weight of survival. Then the sergeant spoke, low, fierce. "You saw something, what was it?" She met his eyes, steady. "Tunnels, crates, they're moving something under the village." His face hardened, and command. She shook her head. "They told me to ignore it." His jaw tightened, a muscle twitched in his cheek. For a long moment neither spoke. Then he muttered, "Figures." The private looked between them, confused. "What does that mean, figures?" Neither answered. Because the truth wasn't ready for him yet. Not for 19. Not for someone still holding his rifle like it was too heavy. Outside, footsteps pounded closer. Shouts echoed. She tightened her grip, voice low. "We need to get to that well." The sergeant glared. "We need to get out." "They'll keep coming. As long as those tunnels are moving, whatever's down there, this won't end." He cursed, rubbing grit from his face. For a moment he looked like he might argue, but then, slowly, he nodded. "Fine, the well, but if we do this, we do it fast." Her chest rose, slow, steady. The choice was made. They weren't just fighting to survive anymore. They were chasing the truth buried beneath this place. And deep down, she knew, whatever they found under that village would change everything. Why was the captain fighting harder against her than against the enemy? The thought clung to her chest as she moved with the survivors through narrow alleys, the village pressing in on all sides. The firefight above was still alive, sporadic bursts, distant shouts. But here, in the broken arteries of mud-brick walls, the world felt tighter. The sergeant led, teeth bared, rifle raised. She followed close, covering the rear. The private stumbled along between them, pale and trembling but refusing to fall behind. The wounded man leaned on another's shoulder, gritting through every step. Her radio hissed again, the captain's voice, sharp, cold. "Overwatch, report your position." She hesitated. Her finger brushed the earpiece, but she didn't answer. The sergeant shot her a glance. "You going to tell him?" She shook her head. Not until we know what we're walking into." As if on cue, the captain barked again, louder. "Sniper, do you copy? I gave you a direct order." Her jaw tightened. She whispered under her breath, words only for herself. "Your orders don't make sense anymore." The sergeant gave a grim nod. "Good. Thought I was the only one hearing it." The private finally spoke, his voice thin. What if he knows?" The sergeant snapped, quiet, but his eyes betrayed the same fear. They reached the well. Up close it was larger than she expected. Stone rim weathered by years of hands, ropes frayed, a bucket long gone. Smoke drifted around it, blending with the dust. To anyone passing it looked ordinary, innocent. But she had seen the shadows, the crates, the men slipping inside. She knelt, fingers tracing the rim, eyes narrowing at the faint scuff marks on stone. Fresh, heavy loads dragged across. She leaned closer, breath catching, yes, a faint draft of cold air rising from below. The sergeant muttered, "You sure about this?" Her voice was quiet, steady. "It's the only way." The private swallowed hard. What if it's a dead end? She looked at him, her gaze firm. "Then at least we'll know." The wounded man groaned. The sergeant cursed under his breath, weighing the options. Then finally he gave a sharp nod. "All right, you first." She didn't hesitate. Sliding her rifle across her back, she gripped the rope, lowered herself over the edge. The stone was rough, scraping her gloves. The drop was longer than expected, 15 feet, maybe more. Darkness swallowed her as she descended, the faint shaft of daylight shrinking above. Her boots hit earth with a soft thud. She crouched low, weapon up, eyes adjusting. The tunnel opened before her. Narrow, cramped. The walls pressed close, earth packed and reinforced with rough wood beams. The air was cool, damp, carrying a faint metallic tang. And it wasn't silent. Voices echoed faintly from deeper in. Muffled, urgent, the scrape of wood, the clatter of metal. Her pulse quickened. One by one the others followed. The sergeant dropped beside her, landing heavy. Then the private, awkward but determined. The last two came slower, the wounded man gritting in pain as he was lowered. They gathered in the dim light, rifles raised, breaths loud in the silence. The sergeant whispered, "All right, which way?" She tilted her head, listening. The voices were faint, but they carried. "Left." She motioned with her hand. They moved in slow, boots sinking softly into dirt. The tunnel bent low, forcing them to crouch at points. Every creak of wood, every drip of water made her finger twitch near the trigger. She thought of her mother, her words, "Don't be a hero, just come home." But what was home worth if she ignored this? The voices grew clearer. Arabic, two men speaking fast, words tumbling over each other. She caught fragments, shipment, transfer, timing. Her throat tight. This wasn't random, this was planned, coordinated. They reached a bend, the glow of a lantern spilling faint against dirt walls. She signaled stop, crouched low and peeked. Two men knelt by crates, wooden, stenciled with markings she couldn't read in the dim light. One crate was open. Inside, metal, long, sleek, weapons, not rifles, missiles. Her chest froze. She pulled back, whispering, "They're stockpiling heavy ordnance." The sergeant's eyes widened. "You're telling me we just walked into a damn weapons hub?" She nodded once. The private's breath caught shaky. "But why didn't command tell us?" No one answered. Because the question was too heavy. She closed her eyes for a moment, steadying herself. This was bigger than a single mission, bigger than their squad. Whatever they had stumbled into was meant to stay buried. And command had sent them here blind. The sergeant's voice was low, almost a growl. "So what now?" Her gaze sharpened. "We finish what they won't." Before he could respond, footsteps echoed deeper in the tunnel, more coming. She gestured, quick, ambush position. They spread out, pressing to the walls, breath shallow, rifles raised. The footsteps grew louder, shadows stretched. Then 3 men appeared, rifles slung, carrying another crate between them. Her finger tightened on the trigger. But just as she was about to fire, her earpiece hissed alive. The captain's voice again, low, cutting, almost knowing. "I know where you are." Her blood went cold. The sergeant glanced at her, eyes wide. "He's tracking us." The captain's voice continued steady. "You're in the tunnel, stand down, do not engage, that's an order." Her heart pounded, he knew, he had always known. Her whisper trembled, furious. "You set us up." Static crackled in reply. Then calm. "Some things are above your pay grade, sniper, walk away." The sergeant snarled, ripping the earpiece out. "Screw him." Her hands shook on the rifle. She swallowed hard, then steadied. She wasn't walking away. The 3 men carrying the crate passed into their sights. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Now." The alley lit with gunfire. Quick, clean. 3 men dropped before they knew what hit them. The crate slammed into dirt, spilling open. Rockets, lined like teeth. The sergeant cursed under his breath. The private just stared, pale, sweat dripping down his jaw. She crouched, brushing her gloved hand over the weapons. Real, fresh, dangerous. Her chest rose, fell. "We can't leave this here." The sergeant grunted. "So we blow it." She met his eyes. "And bring the whole damn tunnel down on us." Silence pressed in. The tunnel groaned above, a beam creaking. Dust drifted from the ceiling. The private whispered, voice shaking. "Then what do we do?" Her throat tightened. She didn't know yet. But one thing was certain. They weren't soldiers in a mission anymore. They were witnesses, and that made them dangerous, not to the enemy but to whoever had sent them here. She stared down at the rockets, the shadows, the darkness pressing close. And deep inside she understood. Coming home might never be an option. Not after this. The earth always remembers. Every footstep left echoes. Every bullet fired left scars. Down here, beneath the skin of the village, the weight of soil and stone pressed so heavy it felt like the earth itself wanted to crush them. She could hear her own breath rasping inside her chest, louder than she wanted. The tunnels pressed narrow, dirt walls cold and damp, beams creaking under the strain of centuries. Each one of them knew one wrong shot, one blast, and the entire ceiling would come down. The sergeant crouched low beside her, eyes locked on the open crate of rockets. His voice was a whisper edged with steel. "If command knew about this, they didn't just send us blind. They sent us disposable." The private stiffened, his young face pale in the glow of the lantern. "But why? Why would they?" The sergeant cut him off. "Because sometimes soldiers aren't meant to win, they're meant to vanish." The words sank heavy. She closed her eyes for half a second, her mother's voice echoing from memory. "Just come home." But what was home now? A place to return to, or a place you carried inside, even as it slipped further away? Her earpiece hissed again, static first. Then the captain's voice, calm, cold. "Overwatch, Sergeant, you're off mission, exfiltrate now." The sergeant bared his teeth in silence, staring at her, letting her decide. She touched her mic, her voice low, even. "Negative, we've found something, this is." The captain's reply cut through like a knife. "You don't need to understand, you need to obey." The line went dead. The private's voice cracked, almost pleading. "Ma'am, if we disobey him." She raised her hand, silencing him. "If we walk away, we bury the truth with us." The sergeant gave a grim nod. "Then we hold here." But the tunnels had their own answer. Footsteps echoing, many, not just 3 men carrying crates this time. A squad, maybe more. The sergeant mouthed the word, "Incoming." They ducked low, pulling into shadows, weapons tight to their shoulders. She steadied her rifle, breath slowing. The first figure rounded the bend, a fighter with his rifle at the ready, scanning. Behind him, others carrying crates, more armed escorts. Their voices were tense, urgent. She exhaled once, squeezed. The first man dropped, throat snapped back in silence. Chaos followed. Gunfire exploded in the tunnel, deafening in the enclosed space. The walls shuddered, dust raining down. Echoes multiplied, a storm of sound. Her ears rang, but she kept firing, each shot deliberate, cutting through the smoke. The private was shaking, but his finger found the trigger, bursts of fire wild but desperate. The sergeant moved like stone come alive, every round precise, every motion brutal. The wounded man, pressed against the wall, gritted his teeth and raised his weapon one-handed, firing through pain. Bodies dropped, crates splintered, lantern light flickered, threatening to die. And then the ground itself groaned. A beam snapped, the ceiling trembled, the tunnel coughed dirt into their lungs. The sergeant shouted over the roar, "We've got to move, now." She fired one last shot, dropping the final fighter, then swung her rifle across her back and grabbed the private by his collar. "Run!" They bolted deeper into the tunnel as the ceiling collapsed behind them. The sound was thunder, earth swallowing earth, beams splintering, fire of gunpowder choking the air. Her legs pumped, lungs burning, dragging the private as the sergeant hauled the wounded man. The tunnel twisted, dirt raining in torrents, until finally they spilled into a larger chamber. It opened wide, an underground hub. Lanterns hung from beams, casting dim light over stacks of crates, barrels, maps pinned to rough walls. And in the center, a radio station. Large, complex, too advanced for insurgents. She froze, heart hammering. The sergeant's voice was a growl. "Tell me that doesn't look military." It did. "Too clean, too precise, not scavenge," supplied. The private whispered, horror in his voice, "We weren't supposed to see this." The sergeant spat in the dirt, "Which means they'll make sure we don't get out." Before she could answer, the radio crackled alive. Not theirs. Theirs was silent, this one. A voice speaking English, crisp, American. "Tunnel breach reported. Contain witnesses." Her blood ran cold. The sergeant met her eyes, jaw clenched. He didn't need to say it. The betrayal wasn't suspicion anymore. It was fact. Her chest heaved. She wanted to scream, wanted to tear the earpiece out, throw it into the dirt. But instead she steadied her breath, forcing the rage into stillness. The sergeant's voice was quiet, deadly. "So, we burn it." She scanned the room. Explosives stacked against one wall, enough to flatten the whole chamber. Her voice was low. "We set charges, collapse everything, take their secrets with it." The private stammered, eyes wide. "But what about us?" She looked at him, her voice steady as stone. "We don't die here, not if we move fast." The sergeant was already moving, ripping open crates, pulling wires, slapping charges against beams. The private stumbled after him, hands shaking as he helped. She crouched near the radio, fingers brushing the dial. Her throat tightened. She wanted to call home, to send one last message, but home wasn't listening. Command wasn't home anymore. The wounded man groaned, leaning against the wall, pale but alive. His eyes met hers. "We're ghosts already, aren't we?" Her chest ached. She whispered, "Not yet." The sergeant shouted, "Charges set." She nodded, pulling the team toward a narrow side tunnel, the only exit left. Their boots pounded dirt, lungs burning. Behind them, the radio still hissed. Orders, cold, calculated. "Contain witnesses." They didn't look back. The blast came like the wrath of the earth itself. The chamber imploded, fire and soil crashing together, a roar that shook the bones. The shockwave hurled them forward, dirt biting their skin, lungs seared with dust and smoke. They sprawled in the side tunnel, coughing, choking, the air a storm of grit. But they were alive. Barely. She pressed her hand to the wall, feeling it shudder, holding them in. The main chamber was gone. The weapons, the crates, the maps, all buried. But the memory was. The sergeant's face was hard, lit by the faint glow of their last lantern. Command wanted this buried. Now it is. But so are we. The private coughed, voice hoarse. "So what do we do now?" She looked at them, at the dirt pressing close, at the weight above. And her voice came low, steady, carrying the weight of everything. "We dig." How long could lungs last on air that wasn't meant for breathing? The dirt was thick with dust, every inhale a scrape of grit, every exhale a prayer. The lantern had died an hour ago, at least it felt like an hour. Down here time didn't tick, it suffocated. Her hands were raw, nails cracked, digging through soil that seemed endless. The sergeant's voice rasped behind her. "Keep it steady, push the loose dirt back, don't choke yourself." The private coughed hard, spat mud, but his hands kept clawing. He was young, but desperation aged him quick. The wounded man groaned each time they dragged him forward a few feet, his breath shallow, body fighting its own surrender. She wanted to stop. God, she wanted to stop. Just close her eyes, let the earth cover her, let the silence win. But her mother's words came back, a thread of warmth in the cold weight of soil. Just come home. She couldn't die here, not in the dark, not buried nameless in a foreign tunnel. Her voice was hoarse, but it cut through the suffocating stillness. One more push, that's all, one more. Her hand struck something harder than dirt. Wood, old boards, reinforcement from whoever had dug these tunnels decades ago. She pressed harder, fingers finding cracks, forcing leverage. The sergeant crawled up beside her, shoulders brushing hers in the cramped space. He jammed his knife into the seam, prying. The board cracked. A thin trickle of air slipped through, cool against her burning lungs. The private gasped. Fresh air. His voice cracked with something close to laughter, close to tears. Together, they tore at the wood until daylight pierced through in a thin, glorious line. Daylight. It stabbed her eyes like a blade, so bright it hurt, but it was life. They clawed their way out, one by one, emerging from the earth like ghosts reborn. Dirt-streaked, coughing, eyes wide at the open sky above them. The sun sat low, bleeding gold across the horizon. For a moment none of them spoke, just silence, just breathing, just the weight of being alive. Then the sergeant pointed, jaw tight. "Look." Smoke rising from the village. The rooftops smoldered, black pillars curling against the sky. The sound carried next, a low thrum of engines, the chop of rotors. Helicopters. American. She froze, her throat locked. The sound should have been salvation, a rope thrown down into the dark, but her chest clenched, because salvation wasn't coming, not for them. The sergeant's voice was flat. They torched it, clean sweep. The private shook his head, disbelief carved into his dirt-streaked face. No, they wouldn't just burn it all. But they would, they had, and she knew why. Erase the tunnels, erase the weapons, erase them. Her earpiece hissed, static, then a voice hers, her captain's, calm, detached. "Overwatch, Sergeant, report." The sergeant looked at her, waiting. His eyes asked the question he didn't dare speak. Do we answer? Do we lie? Do we survive? Her throat burned. She pressed her hand to the earpiece, voice steady. "Mission compromised, engaged hostiles, assets destroyed, we're alive." There was a pause, too long. Then the captain's reply, "Copy, hold position, extraction inbound." Her gut twisted. Extraction. That word had always meant safety. Now it tasted like a trap. The sergeant leaned close, voice low. "They'll put us in the ground, clean, quiet." She looked at him, dirt streaking both their faces, exhaustion weighing heavy. He wasn't wrong. The wounded man rasped from where he leaned against a rock. "We're already dead to them." The private's voice broke. "Then what do we do? Run, hide, fight?" She looked at each of them, at the dirt under their nails, at the blood on their uniforms, at the sky that felt too wide, too empty. Her voice was soft, but it carried. "We survive, not for them, for us." The thrum of rotors grew louder. A black hawk circling, kicking dust into the air. Its shadow swept over them, a predator's wing. The sergeant gripped his rifle tighter, jaw set. What's the play? Her mind raced. If they stayed, they'd vanish into silence. If they ran, they'd be hunted. If they fought, they'd die. But maybe, just maybe, they could outlast, outthink. Wait. The Black Hawk descended, rotor wash hammering the ground, dust blinding, wind tearing at their clothes. The side door slid open, figures inside, American uniforms, faces hidden behind visors, weapons ready. Not rescue, not friends, executioners. Her hand slid to her rifle. Every instinct screamed at her to fire, to fight, to make it loud, to make it undeniable. But her heart pounded against her ribs, and another thought whispered louder. Not yet. Not like this. The sergeant's eyes locked with hers, waiting. The private trembled, torn between trust and terror. The wounded man just closed his eyes, lips moving soundlessly, prayer or curse, she couldn't tell. She swallowed hard, raised her rifle, but not to fire, to signal. She lifted it high above her head, barrel pointed to the sky. The soldiers in the helicopter hesitated. Confusion flickered. And in that hesitation she saw it, an opening. Her voice was steady, carried by the wind, by the roar of blades. We walk. You shoot us, you prove it. You leave us, we disappear. It was madness, bluff, but sometimes bluffing was survival. The sergeant stepped up beside her, mirroring her stance, rifle raised high. The private, shaking, did the same. 3 silhouettes against the dust, defiant, exposed, unbroken. The Black Hawk hovered, rotors screaming, soldiers watching. Seconds dragged like hours. Then, without a word, it lifted, slowly, rising higher, shadows shrinking until it turned, faded, vanished into the horizon. Silence fell heavy. Only the crackle of flames from the village remained. The private dropped his rifle, shaking with relief and terror. Why didn't they? The sergeant cut him off, voice grim. Because killing us in daylight is louder than burying us in dirt. She stood still, heart hammering, dust clinging to her face like ash. Her chest rose and fell, and inside it something hardened. Not survival, not yet, not safety. But resolve. They weren't ghosts, not yet. She turned to the others, her voice quiet but certain. We move, before night, before they change their minds. The sun bled lower, the sky streaked with fire. And together they walked, 3 shadows and a wounded man, carrying secrets too heavy for silence, too dangerous for trust. And though the world around them burned, they carried themselves with quiet pride. Not medals, not applause, just the weight of truth. The desert never truly slept. Even when the sun bled out and the sky turned black, the earth still breathed heat, still whispered through the sand, still remembered every footprint. Out here, silence wasn't safety. It was exposure. She crouched low behind a crumbling wall, eyes scanning the ridgeline. Nothing moved but the wind, yet her chest stayed tight. The quiet was too complete. The private huddled near the wounded man, pressing a strip of torn cloth against the soldier's leg. His hands trembled, but he kept working, jaw clenched. The wounded man had stopped groaning hours ago. That silence scared her more than the pain ever had. The sergeant knelt beside her, eyes on the dark horizon. His voice was a low rumble. They'll be hunting us, not insurgents, ours. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Every bone in her body already knew. The sergeant glanced at her, his face carved by shadow. We need to talk options. Walk east, we hit desert. No cover, no water. Walk west, we run into what's left of the village. South puts us closer to borderland. North is mountains. None of it's good. Her lips pressed tight. Options that weren't options. Choices that weren't choices. The private broke the silence, his voice strained. We tell someone, the world has to know. What we saw, what they did, this can't stay buried. The sergeant's jaw tightened. And who do you think's gonna listen, kid? Who do you think isn't in on it? The private's voice cracked, but his eyes burned. Then why fight at all? Why bleed? Why crawl out of those tunnels if the truth just dies with us? His words stung, cut too close. She remembered her mother again, just come home. She thought of medals, folded flags, the silence of funerals. Who remembered the truth then? Who carried it? Her throat tightened, but her voice stayed level. We carry it until someone can't ignore it. That's how we win. The private's eyes flickered, a fragile hope, something to cling to. But hope wasn't cover. Hope didn't hide them from satellites or drones or the eyes of men who wanted them gone. The sergeant exhaled, a sound like gravel. We move north. Mountains give us cover. It'll be slower, harder, but harder's better than dead in the open. She nodded. North it was. They moved at dusk, slipping through ruins, skirting shadows. Every sound was too loud, every breath too sharp. The desert stretched endless, stars burning cold above them. The wounded man stumbled with each step, leaning heavy on the private. His strength was a thread stretched too thin, but he didn't stop, didn't ask to. There was pride in his silence, even as blood darkened the cloth at his thigh. Hours passed. The wind picked up, carrying sand that bit at their skin, stung their eyes. She pulled her scarf higher, squinting into the grit. Then footsteps behind them. Not theirs. Her heart froze. She raised her fist. The team halted, crouching low, weapons ready. Silence. Then again a crunch of stone, slow, measured, following. The sergeant mouthed, "Shadow team." Her grip tightened on the rifle. She scanned the ridge but saw nothing. Just sand, stone, starlight, ghosts in the dark. The private's breathing quickened, fear breaking through. She touched his arm, steadying. Her voice was low, calm. "Not yet, not unless we see them." The wounded man's lips curled faintly, bitter humor through pain. "Maybe they're just waiting for us to dig our own graves." No one answered. They pressed forward, every sense straining, every shadow a threat. The sound came and went, sometimes closer, sometimes gone, like wolves herding prey. By dawn their legs were heavy, lungs burning. The mountains loomed at last, jagged teeth biting the sky. Shelter if they could reach it. But the wounded man collapsed at the base of the slope, his body finally giving in. Blood soaked the cloth at his leg, his skin gray in the morning light. The private dropped to his knees beside him, panic rising. "We can't leave him, we can't." The sergeant's face was hard. "If we stay, we all die." The private shook his head violently, tears cutting clean tracks through the dust on his face. "No, no, we don't leave anyone behind," we swore. The sergeant grabbed his collar, pulled him close, voice harsh. "And if we don't move, none of us make it out. That's reality." The boy froze, torn between duty and survival, between heart and orders. She crouched, meeting the wounded man's eyes. His breath was shallow, but his gaze was steady. He already knew. His voice was a rasp. "Don't waste me." Her throat burned. She wanted to argue, wanted to swear she'd carry him, drag him, anything but leave him. But she saw the truth in his eyes, the same truth she carried. She pressed her hand against his, dirt-streaked, cold. "You're not wasted." He gave a faint nod, a faint smile, then closed his eyes. The private's shoulders shook, silent sobs breaking free. The sergeant turned away, jaw clenched tight. She rose, her chest heavy, her voice steady. "We move." The boy didn't want to, but he did. One foot, then the other, because grief wasn't permission to die. They climbed into the mountains, stone cutting their palms, legs trembling. The higher they climbed, the smaller the desert became. But the shadows followed, always followed. By midday they found a narrow pass, rocks leaning close like broken ribs. Shelter, temporary. They collapsed in the shade, lungs heaving. The sergeant drank the last of his canteen, then passed it to the private. The boy shook his head. "You need it more." The sergeant shoved it into his chest. "Drink, that's an order." The boy obeyed, though tears still clung to his lashes. She sat apart, rifle across her lap, eyes scanning the valley below. Nothing moved, nothing showed, but she felt them still. Watching, waiting. Her chest ached with the weight of it all, the man they left, the truth they carried, the ghosts that stalked them. She closed her eyes for one heartbeat, hearing her mother again. "Just come home." And she whispered back, voice breaking but fierce, "I'm trying." When her eyes opened, the sergeant was watching her. His voice was quiet, almost gentle. "When we get out of this, what then? You think anyone will believe us?" She held his gaze, the answer heavy in her chest. "Doesn't matter if they believe. What matters is we say it. Out loud. Loud enough it doesn't die with us." He studied her a long moment, then gave a slow nod. "Respect. Not orders, not rank, respect." The private looked between them, voice small. "And if they kill us first?" Her answer came without hesitation. "Then we make sure we're too loud to ignore." The silence that followed was heavy, but not hopeless. Outside the pass, the wind howled through the mountains, carrying with it the whisper of unseen footsteps. They weren't alone, not yet. Why did the silence feel heavier than the gunfire? The mountains were behind her now. The desert, too. She had left the valley where her team had bled, where her choices had drawn invisible lines between life and death. And yet, sitting on the transport plane's bench, she felt as if all that weight had been packed into her chest and locked inside her ribs. The hum of the engine should have been comforting. It was. It was just another rhythm, steady, relentless, like the march of time that refused to pause for grief. Around her, the surviving members of the squad slept in fragments, heads nodding against bulkhead walls, their bodies running on exhaustion and habit. She didn't sleep, she couldn't. Her rifle case was strapped beside her, the same rifle that had saved them and cursed her in equal measure. She thought of the faces she had seen through its scope. Allies, enemies, a boy with hands too small to carry the weight of the vest strapped around him. She had made decisions that would echo far beyond this flight, decisions no medal could justify, no speech could soften. And yet no one spoke of it. The squad had seen her do what needed to be done, but they didn't thank her. They didn't judge her either. They just carried the silence, same as she did. When the plane landed back on base, the night air was cool, salted with the faint tang of jet fuel. The floodlights painted the tarmac harsh white. Ground crews moved like ghosts, loading, unloading, barely noticing the soldiers stepping off, limping, holding their gear like anchors. Reporters weren't here, families weren't either, just silence. And that was almost a mercy. In the debriefing room, officers listened, took notes, nodded. They wanted clarity, sequence, details. She gave them what they asked for, stripped of feeling, stripped of hesitation. A clean version, a professional version. They didn't need to know about the tremor in her trigger finger after the third shot, or how she almost didn't fire at all, or how her chest still ached every time she remembered the boy's eyes. Some truths lived in silence, and she intended to keep them there. Days blurred, paperwork, medical checks, standard procedure. But inside her, nothing felt standard. She walked through the base as though her boots carried not her weight, but the ghosts of all she had lost. The cafeteria noise grated. The sound of laughter somewhere in the barracks felt like another language she couldn't speak anymore. And yet she carried herself the same way she always had, straight-backed, composed, quiet. Some noticed, some didn't. That was the way of things. It was only weeks later, standing alone by the firing range, that she finally let the rifle rest on its stand and stepped back without pulling the trigger. For years, her weapon had been an extension of herself, a tool, a lifeline, a wall between her and the chaos. Now it felt like a mirror reflecting things she no longer wanted to see. She wondered if she'd ever pick it up again. The mission had been classified successful, objectives met, team mostly intact, but the truth didn't feel like success. It felt like a wound stitched closed but never healed underneath. At night she walked outside the wire just to breathe. The desert stretched endlessly, stars scattered like shards of broken glass across the black. Sometimes she thought about the people who lived out there, in villages too small to have names, too fragile to be protected by maps. They would remember the raid not as strategy, but as the night shadows and fire swallowed their home. And she would always be part of that shadow. One evening, sitting by the chain-link fence, a younger private approached. His face was pale, his posture unsure. He hesitated before speaking. "Ma'am, how do you do it?" She looked at him, confused. "Carry it," he whispered. His voice cracked on the last word. "The things we see, the things we do." For a long moment she said nothing. Then she answered softly, "You don't carry it alone, you let it scar, you let it hurt. You keep walking anyway." The private nodded, though his eyes still looked haunted. But in that moment she realized something. Maybe her silence wasn't just hers to keep. Maybe it was a shield for those younger than her, those still learning how to stand under the weight. Service wasn't about applause. It wasn't about medals. It was about walking with the weight and making sure others could too. Months passed. She was reassigned stateside, training command, a safer place. Some called it a reward, some called it rest. But she knew better. It was the quiet exile of someone who had given too much and was being kept close like a fragile relic. She didn't mind. On the first day of her new post, she stood before a class of fresh recruits. Their eyes were eager, restless, unscarred. She spoke little, demonstrated more, taught them not just how to shoot, but how to breathe through the noise, how to stay steady when the world screamed, how to carry themselves with pride, even when pride was the only thing left. They respected her, not because of her ribbons or her record, but because she carried herself with a quiet strength that couldn't be faked. At night, she still walked alone sometimes, past the barracks, past the flags fluttering against the moonlight. She thought about those she had lost, those she had saved, those she had never known but had touched her life just the same. Her story would never be told on the news. Her choices would never be debated in speeches. She didn't need them to be. Because sometimes the truest service isn't loud. It doesn't stand under spotlights or wait for applause. It lives in silence, in the steady beat of boots on ground, in the hand placed on a younger soldier's shoulder when their own weight feels unbearable. She carried herself with quiet pride. And that, more than medals, more than recognition, was the echo she left behind. When she finally set her rifle down for the last time years later, she didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just stood there, straight-backed, composed, the same way she had always stood. And in the silence that followed, there was no applause, no music, no cheers. Just dignity. Because sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. And it lingers, long after the sound has faded.